Welcome. Hi, I'm Darlene Saul. I am so happy you're here because this tutorial is going to help you find and contact the best customers for your business. I have to tell you, I love advertising. I've worked with some great businesses. I really love ambitious people, people who are figuring out what works and building it. This is your opportunity to stop wasting advertising dollars. I work with businesses that are excellent at what they do, but know diddly about advertising their business. This program can seem a little intimidating, but once you do it, it will be easy, and best of all, you get to control the expense and the outcome. My purpose here is to teach you to use the U.S. Post Office program called EDDM for 20-cent mailings, every door direct mail. Before we begin, and I promise not to go into advertising 101, although it's really hard for me, but it is important to know a few basics. I have seen so much waste in advertising. Really effective advertising has three things. It's exclusive, which means the competition does not exist or there's very little. It's affordable. Regardless of what the hotshot salesperson says to you, you are going to have to give people your information more than one time. The third thing is that it's targeted, geographically directed to people who want and also who can afford you and your service. Okay, that's Advertising 101. Let's get right to it. Every door direct mail, or EDDM, requires no labels, no stamps, and no post office permits. It works because it saves the post office money. A mail carrier does not have to sort through the mail by name or address. They simply take your bundle and put one in every box on their route. It is possible to control your advertising. You choose the area where you know that your customers are. This way, you select the area that people can afford your business and that they need your business. This gives you control over spending and also when to advertise. For example, if you own a snow removal company, do you really want to advertise when it's 75 degrees outside? Of course not. If you do roof repairs, do you really want to advertise to a new housing community? No. If you sell high-end chandeliers, do you really want to advertise to a low-income neighborhood? Of course not. Choosing the best area for your mailings provides you with the three basic advertising rule. It goes to the place where you know your customers are, it's affordable so it can be repeated, and there's no competition. I hope that you have your mailer already in mind or one that you've used in the past. We're not going to be covering that today, but it really is important that you make it powerful enough that when they see that mail from you, they'll pick it up and call you immediately. Please do not have anything printed before you read this and commit it to memory. The two blocks here are called indicias. They must be printed on your mail piece. They replace the label and the stamp. Most printers are familiar with these. Make sure your graphic designer knows where to put them on the mail piece because, again, every door direct mail has specific areas where these need to be placed. If they're not correctly printed, you will not be able to mail them for 20 cents. You will need to put a 57-cent stamp on each one. Yikes. With your purchase of this training, you are entitled to a 15-minute consult with me. Please email me a copy of your mailing before you send it to print, and let's both review it. After you do one of these, you'll be the expert. One thing that cannot be stressed enough is that you cannot mail a standard 4x6 postcard using every door direct mail. When the post office set up Every Door Direct Mail, they knew that it had to be very efficient in their local mailing offices, so they set up specific standard sizes that would be easy to work with. There are many sizes to choose from, and if this is your first mailing, let me just suggest that you do 6.25 by 9. This is easy size to work with, and it has plenty of room on both sides for your information. Another critical thing to consider is that the weight of your Every Door Direct Mail is specified. It must be heavier than regular paper. It typically is printed on 14-point cardstock, and that's about 3 pieces of paper together. It also cannot weigh more than 3.3 ounces. There are lots and lots of options within this range. Most printers know the rules for Every Door Direct Mail. Just make sure that you let them know before you have anything printed that this is going to be an Every Door Direct Mail piece. I always tell my clients, take a printed sample to the post office and ask them, does this meet the requirements for Every Door Direct Mail? You won't be able to judge the weight, of course, because it'll just be printed on regular paper. But if the size is correct and the indicias are in the right place, you're good to go. Okay, let's get to it. Registering for the 20-cent Every Door Direct Mail program is absolutely free. Please go to the site listed here and let's set up your free account. And by the way, they will not ask for a credit card. If you don't do this before getting started, you'll have to register during the setup, and it's so much easier to get this out of the way first. All the information you put in on the registration will appear on the paperwork when the system generates your mailing paperwork. Each time you do a mailing, it's automatic, and it really does keep a good accounting of what areas you have mailed to in your history that's recorded on the site. I use my email for a login simply because it's easier for me to remember, but you can choose. On this first page of creating your own account, you're asked to set up your account with a username and password. The next question is answering the security questions at the end, and I'll let you go ahead and do that. Farther down, after the security questions are answered, it will ask you what type of account you want. In this particular case, it's a business account. There are other people who use Every Door Direct Mail for political campaigns or for churches or nonprofits, but in our particular case, it's probably a business account, so check the business box. After choosing your account type, the next step, step 4, is to enter your contact information. This information could be your home or your office, but this information will appear on all the paperwork created by the program for your mailings. It does not appear on your mail piece. It only is there for post office use. Step number 5 is your address. Again, you can use your home or your office, but it is for post office use only. It will appear on your mailing statements. After filling in the form, click Create Account. This is quick. Usually you'll get an email instantly or within a day that your account has been created, and you'll receive an email. And you're registered. Let's go use it. Now we're on it. Let's log on to the official United States Post Office website, which is USPS.com. This is going to be easy. This is what the official website looks like. And from here, you can do a lot of other things, especially now that you're registered. You can order stamps and track postage and do all kinds of things. The one thing that we're interested in today, however, is on the gray bar, you'll see the Business tab at the top. And if you'll click on that, you'll notice on this page under the Business tab that there's 2 areas that list Every Door Direct Mail. It's a little bit confusing to have both on the same page, but They didn't ask me, so but for our purposes, if you'll click on the Every Door Direct Mail portion that's on the left-hand side of the screen. This map will become so familiar to you after you do your first mailing, but for now, let's see what it can do. If you will, type in an address, maybe where you have worked before, an address where you want to target, or just put in a zip code if that works. For training purposes, in this particular training, I've used zip code 32162. This happens to be a picture of route number 32162 here in Florida. You'll notice that there are lots of little purple dots, and most of those dots represent a route. Routes typically are between 100 to 500 mailboxes or residences. That can vary according to rural areas or apartments. So if you click on one of those and it turns blue, you'll notice that on the right-hand side, it will say there are this many people on this route. And on routes, we are mailing to everybody on a route at the same time. You cannot break up a route. You cannot pick a city block. Everything with Every Door Direct Mail is focused on a route. So let's say that there are 275 people on a particular route. You would take 275 mail pieces and your check for $55 to the post office along with the paperwork, and every person on that route would get one of your mail pieces. Think about this for just a second. Would you rather target that neighborhood every few weeks for $55 versus doing a mass campaign which may include that neighborhood but would also have your competitors included, and you would only be able to do it 1 or 2 times, depending on your advertising budget? As you click anywhere in the map that is highlighted in pink, you'll notice that the color will turn blue. On the right side of the screen, you'll notice the facts about that particular area, how many post boxes there are, and how much it will cost to mail to that route. You can continue clicking and add more routes to that particular mailing, and it will add up, and it will add up all the charges for whatever you've selected. You can mail up to 5,000 a day. Before we go on, let's take a quick look at the top banner just above the map. You'll notice that there are other things listed here to help you identify your perfect customer. One thing listed is the number of businesses. You can choose only to mail to residences and delete the businesses altogether. However, the reverse is not true. You cannot just mail to businesses. I really do wish that was available. Also on that top banner is the average age, and the average income is listed. This is, again, becomes so important to know who your customer is. The average income would tell you whether they could afford your product or your service. The average age would tell you a lot too. Just a note here. The post office did these tables many years ago. They rarely update these areas. The routes hardly ever change, but the average age, the average income, of course, is probably really outdated. That's where it becomes important for you to know where your greatest customers are. This is a case where it could be really fun to have an unlimited advertising budget, but for most businesses that's not the case. If you'll notice the blue sections now, it's really outnumbered the pink, but it's risen above 5,000 because every time you click on one of those routes, it adds it to the total of what your expense is going to be and how many you're mailing to. With Every Door Direct Mail Retail, which is what we are focused on, you can only do 5,000 a day. And if you keep selecting on that chart chart and keep adding more routes to your mailing, a red notice pops up and says, you can't mail more than 5,000. And then you just simply click back off of some of the routes until you get under that 5,000 mark. Most of the clients that I've ever worked with, it's rare for a small business to want to do more than 5,000 at a time. But just in case you do, you can get a postal permit for every door direct mail BMEU, which entitles you to mail more than 5,000 a day. But there is a cost for the permit, but you still would not need a label on your mail piece. So that's just one more advantage for you. The nice thing about this is that this can be controlled by you and your budget. You can add and subtract neighborhoods until you get a good fit. In this particular screenshot, I have chosen 5 routes, and it tells me how many people are on those 5 routes and how much it will cost for me to mail to all 5 of those. I can just keep playing here, adding and subtracting routes or neighborhoods so that it fits into my budget and it fits into my perfect client. Okay, in this particular case, we have chosen our neighborhoods and we're ready to generate the paperwork. But just before we do that, if you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's a post office highlighted link. If you'll click on that before we hit the next step, let's talk about that for just a second. Once you select that hyperlink, this box appears, and at the top of it, it says drop-off locations, and it will tell you exactly where you have to drop your every door direct mail. Not every post office takes every door direct mail. Usually there's a designation, like between 3 to 5 post offices. There will be one of them that is designated to handle every door direct mailing, and they also handle all the other bulk mailing things too. The pop-up screen is kind of a fun thing though, because it will recap the route numbers, the number of people on each one of those routes, and the cost to mail them. So it's kind of a nice recap of what routes you have selected before you go on. You can always deselect them and go back and make some changes here. It just gives you a really good synopsis though of where you're headed. After clicking on the next step, the computer produces the paperwork that's needed for you to assemble your bundles and your mailing statement, which goes to the post office. Since you are already registered, we will go directly to the paperwork. If not, right now it will require you to register, so you'll need to fill in those same forms that we did previously. Before your paperwork is generated, and we're getting very close to that, the post office needs to know when you're going to drop off your mailing and how you're going to pay for it. The date could be anytime. It could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be next month. You get to decide. A record is kept of each of your mailings, and if you set a date and you need to cancel it, it's entirely possible by going into your history. Step 3 is about the payment options. The first box, if you'll notice, should have your name or your company name listed. If you have more than one account, it will be in the drop-down list. The next box in this area is important and really can be kind of confusing. When you registered with the post office, as we did at the beginning of this, they assigned you a number. It's called a CRID code. It will automatically appear on all of your future paperwork once you sign into your account. This is not something that you need to remember, as it's only for post office use. There is a box that you do not want to check, and that is, do not check the box, create an order for someone else. Unless, in fact, that is what you're doing, which is fine, but if you do that, they will require you to have the CRID number for that business. So if you're going to do mailings for other businesses, you will want to record their CRID numbers. But For our purposes, your number will automatically appear and you don't need to worry about that because you're not doing it for someone else. After checking the terms and conditions box, the decision must be made about how to pay for it. And you can either pay online or you can pay at the post office. And I've done both, and both are fine. After deciding how you want to pay, again, just want to remind you there's that blue link on the right-hand side of the page that gives you a summary of your order, so you can still, even at this point, make some changes if you need to. And now we're ready for the paperwork. This is the final page before the paperwork is generated, and it's a good idea to screenshot it. It has your order number and the CRID number, which isn't important, but it gives you a short summary of what is happening with the paperwork and what decisions you have made. The final question is, what do I do next? Now we will print the paperwork. There is the summary listed, the routes are listed, and the numbers, and what we want to do now is scroll to the very bottom and it says print all forms. These are the pages that will automatically print when you have said print all forms. The first two are the mailing statements, and those two will go to the post office. The third one is a facing slip, and there will be one of those slips for each of the routes that you have chosen. If you have chosen 10 routes, you will get 10 facing slips, each with the route number on it and who it's going to. The first two pages are what will be taken to the post office. The first page has a little bit of information to be filled in, but you'll note immediately that all of your information is on there, and how much you'll have to pay for it will be on there. The total amount that you've selected is on there. It's really already generated. The second page is just a list of the zip code and the route numbers and how many people are in each route. And we're going to use that second sheet in just a little bit. But the third page, again, there will be an equal number of facing slips depending on how many routes you have chosen. The mailing statement is pretty much complete, so let's kind of concentrate on the facing slips. Keep in mind, each bundle needs its own separate facing slip. In this picture, you will notice that this is a picture of about 5,000 of a recent mailing that I did. And each one of those bundles will require a facing slip. You can make bundles in either bundles of 50 or 100, depending on what you would like to do. Keep in mind that bundles of mail get heavy, and this is 14-point cardstock usually, so, and depending on the size of your mail piece, you may want to keep them at 50, but if not, you can have them in bundles of 100. Looking at the third page of the mailing statement, you'll see that the zip code, the route number, and the number of boxes on each route. So we're going to set the first page of the mailing statement aside for now and work on the facing slips, because that's the information that you will need before you can complete the first page of the mailing statement. It would be great if you could just take the number of people on a route and take a bundle to the post office and let them count them and hand them out to everybody on the route. However, that's not how it's done. So they have provided a facing slip for each route, and they did that because they wanted to make the mail pieces easy to handle for the individual route carriers. They want each bundle to have one of the route numbers on it, the number of pieces that are in that, and it's either going to be 50 or 100. Simply put, you'll divide the number of residencies in a route by either 50 or 100. Anything over 50 or 100 will need its separate facing slip. An easy way to do this is to use the second page of the mailing statement. And this is an important piece, and you take it to the post office with your mailing statement. but it isn't something that you can't write on. So next to the number of residences in the third column, jot down the number of bundles you'll need for each one of those routes. For example, route number 009 has 600 residences. If you're doing bundles of 50, you will need 12 copies of the facing slip for route number 009. If you're doing bundles of 100, you will need 6 copies of the facing slip. Anything below 50 or 100, you still need to have a facing slip. An example of this is route number 22, which has 424 residences. If you're doing bundles of 50, you would need 9 facing slips. One of those bundles will only have 24 mail pieces. The others would have 50. If you're doing bundles of 100 for this same route, you would need 5 copies of the facing slip. The 5th bundle would again only have 24 mail pieces on it. As I've taught this to my clients, many of them say, oh, I'm not going to count to 100 or 50 over and over and over again. And that's not going to happen. The easiest way to do this is to buy a cheapy postal scale. I know some people say that you can just eye the stacks after you count out 50 or 100. Please do not do that. You are either cheating yourself or you're cheating the post office. Some post offices will weigh each bundle. If it does not come close, it will not be delivered. Another tip is to go to the post office and ask for the plastic bins, the ones that you see in the picture in the trunk of my car. Makes it much easier to transport large amounts and to keep the routes separate as well. You'll need to tell them that you're doing an every door direct mail and they will give them to you. Also have pictured here a copy of the facing slip with a rubber band around it, and if you'll notice, it has 3 of 10, and in each bundle is 50, and I have the date on there. This is what 5,000 cards look like as it's on its way to the post office. This happens to be about 7 different routes. The 2-page mailing statement is just laying on top of one of the boxes, but that will go into the post office with me. The facing slips are attached to all of these bundles. The 2-page mailing statement is almost completely filled in when you decided what routes you were going to take, and all of your information is already at the top. Your name and the name of your company, the date, the cost, all of that is already filled in. There's just a few things for you to include. One of them is the total number of bundles. This is the total number for all the routes. Even if a bundle only has 3 in it, it's still counted as a bundle. That's why it's a good idea to write on that second page of the mailing statement how many bundles each route needs. The number of each route will either be 50 or 100. The type of postage is EDDM Retail Indicia, and that just tells the post office that you have included those indicias on your mail piece. The weight. If you don't have a scale, leave it blank. They'll weigh it at the post office. Most 6.25 by 9 weigh 0.3 ounces. The next thing you'll need to do is sign and date it. Also, you'll need to attach a sample. The post office will detach that sample, they will weigh it, and they will size it to make sure it qualifies as an every door direct mail piece. Well, so there it is. You can actually do this. I know it seems long and it seems a little bit confusing, but once you do it one time, it will be child's play the next time, I promise you. If your advertising budget is limited, it's better for you to get in front of a few people many times than it is for you to reach a ton of people just once. One of the things that I tell my clients is, especially those that don't have large advertising budgets, is to get 5,000 printed or get 10,000 printed. You know that the more you print, the cheaper the printing is. So if you get 5,000 or 10,000 printed, and you pick out your neighborhood like the one we discussed at the beginning, and mail to them constantly, like every couple of weeks. Just keep mailing to them, because you know the 80% rule. You have to get in front of them often for them to remember you when they wake up in the morning and all of a sudden they need you. So it's so essential that you get your name in front of them as often as you can. And you can do that once you have targeted where it is that your best customer is. And I want to give you one final note, just because I can, and you can turn it off if you want to. But I teach and live by the 87% rule. And here's the rule. You can have paid advertising in your hand, ready to make a phone call. And that includes any paid advertising, whether it's digital, print, anywhere. And if a complete stranger comes by and says, "Oh, I know somebody," 87% of the time they will take that person's word over any paid advertising, which kind of breaks my heart because I'm in paid advertising. Nevertheless, it really is true. So build your word of mouth, and a great way to do that is to keep sending them something over and over and over again. Pick that best neighborhoods and target them with all of your advertising, and it will be a way to build on word of mouth. Wishing you great success in business. For those of you who haven't already called, don't forget that before you get your first mail piece out, send it to me and let's you and I review it. Talk to you soon. Bye.